against at the time was a little older than us, and really one of the maybe few people around at the time that was really came over and talked to us and was decent and everything. And his name was Kevin Freeman. He ended up going ahead and being on the U.S. Olympic team. So that's the kind of competition that we were competing against, and you know, she went ahead and had no fear. We would just go ahead and end up competing against anybody, and it was one of those, you know, memories that goes ahead and lasts a lifetime.
A good rider. I'm on.
You're on.
I'm on. I'm Shirley Scove, and I've lived in the Dalles since 1958. And from approximately 1962 to 1964, my oldest son, Eric, rode in the Pony Club under the tutelage of Eleanor Borg. He loved it. And Eleanor had these kids doing things you would never dream a child could do on a horse. They rode in the parades. They went up to Roses Park and rode and went off their horses backwards, touched the ground, got back on the horses, stood on the horses, and just did all kinds of dairy-do. Every spring before Pony Club started, Eleanor brought all the horses in from winter pasture, and the mothers got to ride them so that they would be warmed up for the kids. And they ran away with a lot of us mothers. I was never a terrific horseman. But it was a lot of fun anyway. And Eric was a fabulous rider and loved it. And looking at old movies, I see he rode our pony, Lassie, in a parade also with Fort Dalles Rider, or with the Pony Club. But our pony was never in the Pony Club stable. But it was a true experience. Eleanor just did things with those kids that were unbelievable.
Nobody wore helmets then?
Nobody wore helmets or seat belts or... And if you could have seen them at the park, you would just not believe it. Little kids, some of them were only 6, were standing up on their horses' saddles. And the horses all stood there and were very obedient. It must be because of the riding us mothers did. Anyway, that was my Pony Club experience.
So do you remember, is there anything that you thought that as a takeaway that might be a life teaching moment?
Well, I think that it was wonderful for Eric, for one thing. He really learned how to handle himself. He was a fantastic horseman. He could ride Linda's horse when she could not get her Appaloosa to cross a bridge. Eric could get on and the horse would go across. So he learned a lot from Eleanor about how to handle himself, how to handle a horse. Unfortunately, he had a terrible dust allergy and never could ride.
So was he one of the kids that rode to the county fair?
I don't think he rode to the county fair.
That was Dusty.
I don't know, but I could ask him if he would remember.
So does he like horses to this day?
He loves horses, but like I said, he just could never ride. He ended up on swim team because there was no dust. But the other two rode. They rode the pony, and they rode, and Linda rode in 4-H on her horse. And but Eleanor was a teacher. She was a crusty old gal, but she was a teacher.
Is there any memories you have of her?
I just remember her as being a person you didn't cross. My husband was a veterinarian. He had to go out and treat her horses, and he and Eleanor would cross swords a lot of times. But he loved horses and was good with horses. He was a good veterinarian for horses, but he and Eleanor, they were each other's throats most of the time. But she really was an impact. You have to admire her.
Tremendous impact on the kids in this community.
Impact on all those kids. I'm sure every one of them came away with something gained.
So how did Eric get involved with the Pony Club?
You know, I just have no idea. It just escapes me how, except they must have been asking for kids to ride,
Or maybe his friends maybe learned it?
but there weren't any of his friends that I see in those pictures except girls, Kathy Shakey, and I just don't remember any of the other kids even. It's been, there wasn't a girl. It's been 50 years. That's a lot for an old lady to remember. But he just loved it, and they had their little uniforms, their little brown and yellow shirts and cowboy hats. Oh, he also had a fringed leather jacket that he loved.
He was a dude.
Well, he was a dude. But we were all involved with horses.
Yeah.
We all had cowboy boots
Yeah.
and partaked in the Fort Dalles Riders and so forth.
I think Milt was even a president of it at one
Oh,
time.
I think he was too. And he was a good horseback rider. Like the one horse we had that I couldn't ride until Milt rode it for an hour, then I could ride. But I love horses. I love the way horses smell. Truly.
Okay. Thank you. Now, if anybody needs to get up and stretch before we get into the dance portion. Okay, we're good? All right, let's see what happens.
There's a nice bathroom downstairs, I'm just saying. It's embarrassing when you have to go in there.
Do we have any students? Okay. Do you remember if she had a southern accent?
Absolutely.
Did she?
She had a delightful North Carolina kind of an accent.
Good, okay.
The southern drawl.
Raise your hand again if you danced with her.
Oh, I wasn't dance. I was horse.
How many were?
How many danced? Okay, super. Well, she was a southern gal. She was born in near Asheville, North Carolina, and that is in the Great Smoky Mountains, and that is part of also Appalachia. So there's not too much said about her father, so I don't know. She keeps going back there when she needs to be settled. So I don't know if they owned a farm back there. She talked about he taught her the love of animals, so don't quite know that.
You don't know? I do. Oh, she knows. Her father was a forester.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's what they were doing in North Carolina. He got a job there.
Okay, so why did he go to the big city of Atlanta, Georgia?
I have any idea, that was news to me. But I know that she was a forester, and I know she enjoyed telling us about being there in that, North Carolina, and knowing the Vanderbilts and the Biltmores and all those fancy people went to their parties, all that.
Because I have a feeling, her mother,
Lived forever.
yeah, but she may have been the socialite person. I don't know if her dad was that way. Anyway, there's just some things that you just don't know,
But her
when.
mom, when she was diagnosed with polio, her mother looked at that, the doctor said she'll never walk. And the mother looked at the doctor and said, my daughter will dance. And that's when they got her dance lessons and the polio.
Yep, and they did go to move, when she was 6 years old, they moved from the North Carolina to the big city of Atlanta, Georgia. So, when I look at this picture, I think she may have been dressed for a recital. Because you can almost see like she has almost ballet slippers on.
But does she have braces on her legs?
I don't think so.
There is something, I'm gonna Oh, ribbon, okay.
Ribbons, yeah, it's ribbons, like little socks and little soft shoes. Yeah, so she started out being a student at 6 years old, and she didn't quit until she got graduated out of Treaty Oak. Okay, so her and her mother made their first trip to New York City. That's about 890 miles from Atlanta, Georgia, when Eleanor was 13 years old. So whether her mom, maybe because she was a teenager, you know, she says, this is what I want to do, or maybe her mom says, you know, let's go do this, we're going to be famous or whatever, I don't know. But they enrolled her in a performing dance school. Well, you know, when you're 13, you think you know the world. Well, they got to this dance school, and it didn't go so well. Eleanor realized she didn't know very much, and also the teacher was kind of discouraging. So Eleanor and Mom came back home. This is the second trip? No, this is the third trip. The second trip she made when she was 16 with her mom. This is when she graduated. She attended a private high school, so she got to graduate early. But 16 is still really young to be in New York City. So, you know, she mentioned her family had moved there. And somehow, if her dad was a forester, I don't know how that went. But anyway, when they did go to New York City, it was against her father's wishes. He did not approve of this. And they went there for only 1 month, and she wanted to test if her dancing was good enough to go into vaudeville, that was her dream. And as Eleanor recalls, she wanted to break my dances into the New York stage. And during this 1 month time was the first time since age 6 that she stopped her dancing lessons. But they were only there a month, so as soon as I got back home, she started them up again. Their third trip was the next year, and she got a job in the ballet. And this was at the Strand Theater. And you know, it's amazing to take somebody that's raised in the mountains, and all of a sudden you go to the big city. I mean, but Eleanor had high hopes, as we'll see here as we go down through here. The next year in 1928, when she went back to New York, she got a job. She was landed in the dancing corps. So I don't know what a dancing corps is. A Broadway musical. Maybe there's a chorus line or whatever, something like that. And that was at Hold Everything. And these theaters were just magnificent. This is an actual photo of what she would have seen when she'd been on stage. This kind of amazes me. And being Eleanor, just as she was performing, she opened up another dance studio. And this time it was in this really swanky Hotel Carlisle. So she always kept her standards very high, even at an early age. So in 1930, she was in the Little Show. This was the first of the little shows. And she had a specialty act. And that ran for 9 months. And this is what the inside of the theater would have looked like when she was performing. And then she got on in the second little show. And she did a specialty act in this. So she went from the chorus line to doing a specialty act. And this is at the Royale Theater. So these are pretty swanky places. And that one lasted for 63 performances. I kind of got the impression by looking at it, the Broadway shows at that time would go from like June through September. They had kind of most of them I looked at. And then there was a third little show. This is when she was 21 years old, 1931. And this was at the Music Box Theater. And it closed after 163 performances. And while she was doing all these Broadway shows, she was also doing stuff on the side. Surprise, surprise. The Broadway shows usually lasted from about 7:30 in the evening to around 10:30 or 11. And then she would dance on supper shows. And this is one where she danced at the Hollywood Cabaret and Restaurant, where she had a specialty act. I love it. Down there it says dinner, $1.50. And you even got air conditioning with that. Anyway, and these supper shows would last from 11 o'clock through wee hours of the morning. So she was kind of burning the candle at both ends. Well, 1932, after working 20 to 24 hours, she suddenly realized she would have a complete nervous breakdown if she didn't let it go. And her schedule looked like from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. she would teach her dancing students, and she would also take lessons herself, being a student. And then from 7:30 to 11, she would do her performing. And then from 11:30 to 4 a.m., she would be performing at something else. So she was a maniac, I think, when it comes to...
May I interject something?
Yes.
She took from two gentlemen in New York, Johnny Boyle and Jack Donahue, two Irishmen that she really loved all the time. And she talked about, she learned more from them than anybody.
And they were dancing instructors?
They were dancing.
Yeah. Well, I know she made the comment that she had probably taken lessons from every dancing instructor in New York City. I mean, she was just very dedicated to it. Yes, thank you. Okay, so when she had this crazy thing where did she go back to? She went back to North Carolina. That was her place of calm. She stayed back there for 4 years, which is a long time for Eleanor. Anyway, and the peace and quiet of the mountains and everything helped her heal herself, physically and mentally. But in spite, had said they would go back to New York twice a year. So I don't know if that was for more lessons, or I don't know what that was about. But anyway, in 1936, the call of the bright lights brought her back. She was 26 years old, and she left her dance lessons in Asheville, North Carolina, and Greenville, South Carolina. She left those to older students. So she kind of did here too. So that kind of goes along with it. And she decided that, as she said, she wanted to go back and get to dancing before she got too old, at the age of 26. And she went into ballet. She was a member of the Michael Folkines famous ballet company. When they opened at the new Randall's Island Stadium. And I couldn't find a photo of that. But even to this day, it's considered a ballet mecca. And this isn't a picture of Eleanor, but can't you just see her striking this pose just because she could and it felt good? Anyway. So, she had high hopes. And I think the Radio City Music Hall Rockettes were probably the primo in her mind. So, she went back and, as they say, either go big or go home. And this was on her bucket list that she wanted to do, and she did it. Now, some interesting things about the music hall. It was only 4 years old, so it was just about brand new when she was there dancing. And it was in the winter of 1936. So what did our Smoky Mountain little girl see when she went on the stage? This is a picture of the lobby. You talk about swanky. It's pretty swanky. And they built it it was designed not to just entertain and amuse, but the designers said it was to elevate and inspire. And if anything could inspire, I think that probably would. And this is during the time of the Great Depression. So, kind of interesting. So what did Eleanor see when she was on the stage? The shining gold curtain is the largest in the world, even today. And the Wurlitzer organ was so big it had to be housed in 11 rooms. This is what the stage might have looked like. It had 3 elevators, and you can see the 2 on the side, and then maybe that 3rd one. There was a 4th one that could even bring the orchestra up to stage level. What's also interesting is that they had mechanisms built in that they could have real rain, they could have fog, and the fog and the clouds, they had it somehow tied into the Con Edison generating plant, which was just down the street. So they got real fog and real steam or whatever. And another interesting thing, they had a backstage dormitory that had 20 beds in it, and it was usually used for the girls could rest between shows if they were tired. But on stormy or winter nights, they could stay overnight there. And They even had a nurse on work there too. So, I mean, this was big time. So here are some pictures. I went into the archives of the Rockettes. They used to be called the Roxyettes. They started out, but in 1934 they became the Rockettes. And girls had to be 5'5" to 5'8", pretty faces, shapely figures, who were adept at ballet, tap, and soft shoe, and able to kick at least 6 inches above their heads. That to me sounds impossible right now. Anyway, and Eleanor was probably one of the shortest in that line. So. And another interesting note, they didn't start hiring black dancers until 1988. Yeah. So this is an actual photograph from their archives of 1936 when Eleanor would have been dancing. And so there's a good chance that she's in that photograph somewhere in that chorus line. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Where is that, please?
This is in New York City at the Radio City Music Hall.
But that last picture that was outside.
I don't know whether behind there is maybe a drop-off where people can eat.
Oh, okay.
They didn't explain that. Anyway, she said she still had 2 dance studios running in North and South Carolina. And after she left the Rockettes. And during these, she published this book, and it's called What Every Parent Should Know About Dancing School. And I thought it was interesting reading down through here. She even talks about boys, can boys be in dancing school? Obviously could because in those pictures she has a lot. Anyway, she also published a supplement to this book when she came to the Dalles. Okay, so where am I? I got sidetracked here. And it was during this time, after she completed performing for the Rockettes, and where she was back in North Carolina, that she continued to show Candlelight up and down the East Coast. And knowing Eleanor that she had high hopes, Madison Square Garden, why not? And that's where she went, and that's where she won. So that's kind of cool. Anybody getting bored yet? Okay. So, she decided to join the Army after Pearl Harbor. And these are a couple, anyway, these are a couple recruitment posters that the Army had. And so I'm wondering which one would appeal to Eleanor. Maybe both of them. And anyway, I went in and looked at her application, and she showed her occupation as a showgirl. Yep, an entertainer. So, and the Army was hiring showgirls and entertainers. They were recruiting them. So what a perfect match. So, this is where she met her husband, Robert. And while he was stationed at Fort Riley, he was a dashing horseman, and he taught horsemanship. He was a horsemanship instructor. Can you see how this would appeal to her? Anyway, he was an instructor in their cavalry school. And he went on to serve in New Guinea and to command the last active horse troop in the European theater patrolling the Russian border. And once he came back home, they were married in 1945. And he was born in the Philippines, but his family moved to Thai Valley. I don't know if they had a ranch there or what they did in Thai Valley. Anyway, he grew up chasing wild horses on the Indian reservation, and he also trained horses for the Dodd Ranch, and this is where you turn off of 197 going into Thai Valley. He showed their horses at the Wasco County Fair. So that's where he got his early beginnings. So after she finished her tour of duty, she went back to North Carolina, and that's where she had Kristen and Robbie. And Major Borg stayed in the Army, and he was involved with training the Olympic team. So he didn't, I don't think, come with her. And this is her class in Thai Valley. And this was in 1949 when she came back. So who these little kids are, I don't know. And it was in the Grange Hall. And I don't know where the Grange Hall was in Thai Valley because it has since burnt down. So, yep. It's the first Borg School of Dance on the West Coast. So in 1950, she moved to Dalles, and she opened her dance studio in the old Sprouse Suites building. And you can see Tony's there, so it's across the side street in that brown upper store, that brown building. And she also taught dancing. I don't know if she did horse stuff in Sherman County. Anyway, I've been told by different people that were her students that she did teach up there. So she got around. And this was the supplement that she wrote after she came to the Dalles that accompanied her little green book. It was kind of difficult figuring out exactly, there's no dates on it, but her phone number is 3854. So it was pretty early. And in 1953, she moved her dance studio from the old Sugar Bowl building, and that's where I took tap and acrobat lessons. It was behind where St. Vincent de Paul is on the cross street. It's Garrison, and then she moved it up to B Road.
And I started that summer of 53 with her in Wood River.
Oh, really? So she also had a dance school down there?
In an old neighborhood woodcraft hall, which is no longer.
Well,
I took lessons from her in 52 upstairs in the Civic Center, dance and acrobat. In the Civic Center.
here in the Dalles?
Yeah.
And I did it at the Sprouse Rights building because I read it in the stuff that I brought today.
I mean, that's, did, you know, and she's probably just looking for a space that, you know, she could utilize, and maybe cheap, you know, because she was on a budget. So, yeah.
And what is the old Sugar Bowl building? I know it's torn down, but what is this Sugar Bowl? What is this?
It is not torn down.
Oh,
No, it's operating as a bistro, or it's now the Beechwood. Yeah.
And part
But
of
this
it
is
down.
before it moved to that little shopping center.
But it was on the front corner of
Yeah,
that
it's
lot.
across the street from St.
It was
Vincent.
ice
The
cream.
building was up to where.
Yeah, right, but we lived in town here in 47, 48, and I just remember, I was, you know, fascinated by the name, the Sugar Bowl, or the restaurant, but I thought it was like across it would be on the front of the parking lot that is in front of that whole building now. It wasn't?
It was behind it.
It was behind it, probably in the alley, and it was, as I remembered, it was kind of a long building, a fairly narrow, long building. So, you're welcome. Welcome.
Okay, so it would get along like this to the alley behind the building?
Yeah.
It wasn't on Kent?
No,
Oh, okay.
no.
Yeah, it's on the ninth, and there's a parking lot, it's right across
Yeah,
the street from
right.
St. Vincent.
And I contacted the Discovery Center and everybody trying to find a picture of it, you know, and nobody seems to have it. So, I don't know, it's lost in,
Linda,
yes,
the old Sugar Bowl is moved out on, well, just off from, 13th, West 13th, or you know.
yes, up to her place up
Yeah,
there.
that's a private.
Yes.
residence. It's a private residence now. It was never torn down. I've been inside.
Oh, really?
it was moved?
Yeah, she had it moved in 1955 out to her place. And I'm thinking, you know, that's about the time where she got her divorce, so maybe she had money to do that. She never did have money. I mean, she, you know,
She liked to boss people around a lot.
well, you know, and she was raising 4 kids, you know, pretty much on her own. So I mean, you got to give her credit. And I also thought, you know, how would it feel to be one of her kids? You know, when she's teaching the whole town, you know, how would you get that attention that maybe you needed? I would think it'd be very difficult. But anyway. And then in 1973,
It said in the paper, the Sugar Bowl, that she moved was an ice cream drive-through business. And they moved it up there. It looks like, where the old Hawkins Camp has a front on it like that. So, but it's up at her rural house.
yeah, I didn't know it had been turned into a residence, but that's interesting.
Yeah, so is the barn.
Yeah, yeah,
Turned into a, I don't know, garage or something.
something. Anyway, so in 1973, she finally retired, and she sold her dance business, her dance studio. And also, but she still continued to teach at the master dance classes, which teaches dance teachers in Oregon. And she continued to do that for many years. So she continued to be a teacher and a student for a long time.
This one was born in 1976, and Eleanor Borg had a preschool up there.
And I remember her,
She was
tap
doing,
and gymnastics.
yeah, little kids, real little kids.
Where was that?
That was her place up on B Road,
Oh, yeah.
and that was, I mean, she was born in 76, so it must have been like 80, maybe?
And was Eleanor teaching, or did she have helpers?
No, she was doing it.
Well, she had a couple of
she
Because I remember my kids
She
had
had,
a
she
helper.
had some big guys. Yeah, who
Yeah, she sold that house when she moved on to Camp.
Yes.
And to Harrison's, and then they did the preschool and all of that up there. But you have the name Borg School.
Maria was the girl.
So anyway, also fulfilling a lifetime dream, and she enrolled in then Treaty Oak College in 1978, and she graduated 2 years later with a degree.
That would have been the second, we started classes in 77. The first Treaty Oak classes were in the fall of 77. So she started, she just,
Okay.
that was her first opportunity to go to college.
Well,
And that's when she wrote her book. That's why she took the
Oh.
classes up there with writing,
so
so she could.
Does
write
it
her book.
I can remember, that didn't, the college didn't move up there
yeah,
until 93.
well, that was the oldest picture.
So yeah, well, I know.
It was all over the place,
Right.
yeah.
We were, yeah, all over, the high schools and
Yeah.
downtown, yeah,
Yeah.
we're right,
But that's when she started writing her book.
right.
So, do you know, does anybody know if she ever published it?
No.
Because I have the original manuscript that Barbara Nagel typed up for her, and I would hope someday to be able to publish that. I think it would be such a inspirational,
I'd like to read it.
You can't find Kristen?
no,
Oh,
Well,
or you type it
What
and put it
about
on the
Stephen?
web.
Because the last I knew, Stephen lived here still.
he did,
Stephen lives in Mid River.
he did, not now. We got a hold of a daughter or a cousin or something, and there's big rifts in that family.
Oh, yeah.
And we asked if, this person could forward this on to some of the Borg family, and it was just like,
Get that.
Yeah,
Hell no.
Stephen lives in Hood River, and he used to work for Turtle Island.
he also used to work for Sally Temple here at the gas station, too.
Drove a Pepsi truck for a long time.
Yeah,
My husband,
yeah.
a few years ago.
So, I was hoping that, at least Kristen or one of them would be able to come today and share some of, their information. I also reached out to Greg Filler, who, are you Greg's mama?
Yeah, I'm Greg's mama, except I could write you books about all this. From 5 years of age till he was 19, and because of Mrs. Borg, he has been around the world with his tap shoes.
Yes, he has. Anyway, I sent him emails, they didn't answer, so I thought, I'm gonna go back to old school, I'm just gonna write a letter and send it snail mail, and I did, and I still haven't heard from him. So, anyway, I was hoping that he would at least send a shout out or something, but anyway, I'm sure he's very busy, and maybe, doesn't he do cruise ships too?
Yes, he was on the cruise ships as
Yeah.
an entertainer.
Yeah,
He's been all over.
and something about the Palazzo?
Yep. He
Yeah.
was in the pony club. I didn't have any money, and I told Mrs. Borg, I'm the only pony one in the pony club, and she went to the Indian reservation and got a pony, and he broke it.
Really?
Yeah, really. Yeah, this is a long time ago.
So did you see any of his pictures in this?
No, I didn't. No.
Okay.
But he's still in Vegas, and he teaches now.
He has his own dance business,
Yes.
studio.
Yes.
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 Yeah. Well, super. I'm glad you got to come. Yeah.
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
We have it.
What was it was Robbie and Kristen and Steve, and who was the fourth?
John David.
John David.
Johnny, was she younger than Steve?
No, he was between